Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
what's your overall message
Yeah.
today?
So overall, I think it's there's I teach and train on influence and persuasion, body language, rapport, and as far as what's happening in the world in terms of artificial intelligence, things becoming more digital, more distant, more virtual. What's gonna happen is we're going to crave and thirst for the human-human connection. And so my message is really about how do you optimize the human-human connection. Oftentimes we talk about flow states, like a flow state, like if you're, you know, Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson playing basketball, then there's a flow state while they're playing basketball. The flow state between people is rapport, and that connection is something that's, I think, it's fizzling, and we need to make sure that this is something that we nurture and develop deliberately. And so when it comes to words like influence, oftentimes people think that it means something dark or deceptive or manipulative. But in actuality, if you're a parent, your job is to influence your children. If you are a physician, your job is to influence your patient. If you're an adult child, your job is to influence your parents to make, you know, wise decisions about their health or their future. And if you serve the community in any kind of way, your job is to influence others. And so that's the core of the message, and that we shouldn't wing it. Too often we are winging it, and but industries like the junk food industry, the soda industry, the movie industry, gaming, gambling, the industries that actually sort of poison our society in many ways are not winging it. They're very deliberate. They devote billions and billions of dollars and resources to learning how to move people. And really, what we are really gifted as humans when we see each other, when we connect with each other, when we look each other in the eye, we are really gifted at making a human-human connection. It's just that for some reason, people are a little averse to it when it starts to become intentional. But actually, we should be intentional. If I have a friend who lost a loved one or is going through a breakup or a divorce, I'm going to console them. That's intent. That's my intent for being there. I should do that. Well, what if I could get better at it? If as a parent, I have 6 kids, I have to move my children to be good, productive people in society. I should get better at parenting. I should be deliberate about that. So that's the core message, is that influence is something that we should stop winging it and start doing it deliberately. And influence for good, because there's too many forces in the world that are influencing for bad. And so how do we skill up and stop having this stigma about influence and persuasion, rapport, connection? So that's the core message.
Is it ever hard for you as a Muslim to interact with someone that maybe doesn't know a lot of Muslims? I mean, do you ever face, I don't know if it's Islamophobia, but
Yeah.
Do you ever, just automatically have someone not like you, and how
Yeah.
do you handle that?
Yeah, sure. So that does happen. But I would say for me, it's a little bit less, right? I'm a white male convert, right? I accepted Islam in 1993, and so for me, I'm not experiencing what, say, people from Africa or the Middle East or South Asia or or the Latino converts or anything. I'm not experiencing what they experience. I'm certainly not experiencing what the women experience. Although I do have 5 daughters and a wife, right, and they all wear the headscarf, it's not something that I necessarily experience directly as much. So for me, my approach is I let them get to know me first, and then let them stumble upon the fact that I am Muslim. I'm not necessarily saying, "Hi, my name's Ed, and I'm a Muslim." I introduce myself with my name, which is Ed, and then I let them see my character. And one of the things that I've done since, say, the early 2000s is I've taught a lot of new Muslim classes. So people who have converted to Islam and now they're learning about their religion. When I teach them and I ask them about how they became Muslim, it's almost universal. It's first, they met somebody and they saw their character. And then they saw the character, and then they got curious. And then once they got curious, they started asking. And then they move away, and then they meet someone else, and they're like, hey, wait, there's another Muslim. What's up with their character? I mean, they're so generous, or they're so kind to their neighbors, or they're so devoted to prayer or to fasting or to whatever. And so I want to understand it. So when they come from curiosity, it's much easier question. It's a much easier conversation when they witness somebody's character, right? So that I would say is the key from my end. Is I kind of let them stumble upon it. Sometimes I'll invoke a little curiosity. Like, for example, I'll mention something like, yeah, when I was in medical school, I was kicked out of my home after I changed my faith. And, and then I just keep going. I don't say what my faith is. I don't say any of that. But later they come and ask and say, wait, what do you mean? You were kicked out for your faith. What did you convert to? What did you become? Like, so for me, it's a little bit of a luxury in that sense. Like, I let them see my character first, which is actually the way Islam often is introduced to others, where they get curious. It's not, instead of these sound bites that you might see on the news in a negative way. Other times I'll leak history stuff. Like, for example, if anybody goes to, so my family is Catholic originally. If you go to Jerusalem and you go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, every morning that church is opened by a Muslim family, because a Muslim family has the key. And the reason is, early on, many churches were fighting. The Coptic Church with the Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Roman Catholic, etc. They were bickering about who would be the ones to do certain rites and rituals. And because they were fighting, eventually they chose a family that they trust. And that key has been passed down throughout the years. If you tell someone that story, they're like, wait, what? The holiest church in all of Christendom is opened by a Muslim every morning? Yes, it is. Not only that, there's a mosque next to the church. And the reason it's there is because when the Muslim leader, his name was Omar, when he went to that church, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, he was asked by the priests, pray here. You can pray here if you'd like. And he said, no, I don't want to pray here because I'm worried that later generations will turn this church into a mosque. So instead, he prayed outside of it. That's where a mosque is. So there's a mosque next to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Same thing if you go to Bethlehem, there's a mosque next to the church where Jesus, may peace be upon him, was born. And so that mosque is there because Omar didn't want to pray in the church for fear of later generations disrupting the church. So, and then if you look throughout history, the churches and synagogues were protected by Muslims over the centuries. And so if that sort of historical stuff, and recently there were some things in X and Twitter and stuff like that where people are talking about Islam as a foreign thing coming to the U.S. The first country to recognize U.S. independence was Morocco, and that letter was written in Arabic, and it was translated by multiple people translated it, but one of those people was a freed slave, because many of the slaves that came over were Muslim. So you leak little bits of history, and then people find out stuff like, wait a minute, wow. So it's just something where if people get curious and then they search on their own, then that's usually a turning point for a lot of folks. But if you just scroll and you go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, you're actually being influenced. Those platforms are designed to influence people to have experiences. And those experiences shape our opinions and our biases. So biases are shortcuts. And if you watch enough of the same stuff, you shape a bias. It's almost like you're rolling a wheelbarrow through a rut, and it becomes a deeper and deeper rut. The more you scroll, you're rolling through a rut. So essentially I think it's mostly about showing good character and then invoking a little bit of curiosity. If somebody just takes the initiative and learns about it, they might be shocked. Like my family, for example, when my daughter was a toddler, I was at my cousin's wedding, and my daughter was a toddler. My wife was next to me, and my daughter pointed up at a statue of Mary and said, "Mama." And then she pointed at a statue of Mary's mother and said, "Mama." And then she pointed at a stained glass window of a woman with the headscarf and said, "Mama." And I saw my aunts and uncles look at her and look at the statues and then say, the realization hit, through the mouths of babes, right? Like the truth comes, right? The realization hit that my wife looked more like Mary than anyone else in the church, right? And that it's not that far off. And if people just learned that, Muslims believe that Jesus, peace be upon him, was born of a virgin, that he performed miracles, that he will come again in the end of time, that he, like all of these things that they just don't know exist. And so I think once they get a little bit curious, they find out. And
Are we at, I mean, we just had Mandami, and by the way, they sent me to New York. I got to meet him. I covered him for, about 3 or 4 days. Yeah, Mandami elected mayor of, the largest city in the United States, at a time that, again, we're still kind of politically schism,
yeah.
not just Muslim.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
But is this a time for Muslims, because you are a Muslim, to shout from the rooftops the good things they're doing, to say, hey, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher, I'm a lawyer. Is this an opportunity right now? Is there an opportunity right now in this country for Muslims to, I don't know, do some PR? I mean, because again, there are people also doing PR against Muslims.
Right. Yeah. Well, so there's a whole industry around that PR against Muslims. That's like, funded by millions and millions of dollars. And so I honestly, I think it still goes back to the character and be whatever you're doing. See, there's this concept in Islam called Ihsan. It's often translated as excellence. So if you are a teacher, be a teacher with Ihsan. Be a teacher with excellence. If you are a physician, be a physician with excellence. If you are a neighbor, be a neighbor with excellence. If you're a parent, be a parent with excellence. If people in all of their roles would fulfill the character that Islam calls to, and people know that they are Muslim, that will actually be better than any other PR out there. I think that is actually probably the highest yield. I can't necessarily comment. I don't think I'm qualified to comment on like what a political strategy would be or a campaign of reversing the Islamophobia. But I would say it still comes back to the one-on-one connection with people, and that will undo any scrolling that people do. If they interact with a Muslim that has good character, and like, wait a minute, they're not like all these images I've had all my life, right? And some people are starting to realize. I mean, you'll start to see some of the influencers that were previously sort of anti-Islam started questioning, wait, why did I ever feel that way? Was that ingrained in me? I'll tell you, me personally, when I was in high school, I got into an Ivy League college that I was about to go to, and the Gulf War had broken out. And I told my mom, I'm going to go into the war and fight the towelheads. That's what I told her. And she hit me. It was the only time she ever hit me in my life. And she said, you know nothing about those people. You know nothing about those people. 2 years later, I became one of those people. I'm a towelhead, So, but the point is, if you don't know and you seek it out, or you meet the other people all around, I think that is the higher yield sort of, I think, play, if there is such a word. If Muslims, if people know that Muslims are Muslim, because a lot of times they don't even know. Their doctors are Muslim. The nurses taking care of them are Muslim. They may not know because they're not all wearing a headscarf or a beard, a big beard, or they don't all have names. Like my name is Ed Tori. Like that, what is that? Like it's like I'm Irish, Italian, and German, like a background. Like what are you gonna do? My kids say they're married German, Pack Italianish. But anyway, I would say, yeah, it kind of comes down to the one-on-one connection in my mind.
You're pretty good at the one-on-one connection.
Oh, thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
that's all I have. Anything I didn't ask you that you want to say?
No, I don't. I would just say, be deliberate in influencing other people for good. In whatever capacity you're already in. It's like seek ihsan or excellence in moving other people to be for good, right? And so I think that's the only thing that's going to break the fractionation and the split that we see in our society is to realize, like, back in the day there was a song it was either by the Police or Sting, and it was like, I hope the Russians love their children too. Guess what? The Muslims love their children too. Guess what? The Jews love their children too. Guess what? The Christians love their children too. The Hindus love their children too. The atheists love their children too. Like, I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm actually going to be asked about how I treated other people, not how they treated me. And also, I'll tell you, I used to run a cardiac surgery unit, so I did the pre and post care. I saw thousands of people in the moments before they thought they were going to die, because they think they're being wheeled into their heart surgery. They think they're going to die. And they only thought about three things. No matter what their religion was, their race, their ethnicity, their language, their socioeconomic status, they only thought about three things: God, family, and how they treated other people. That's it. So if at the end of our lives, that's what we're going to think about, maybe we should start thinking about it now and start acting on it now. How you treat your neighbor. How you treat, like, I'm going to be asked how I treated my neighbor. I'm not going to be asked how my neighbor treated me. And so and I think you'll find most Muslims you meet feel that exact way.